Welcome everybody. I'm Joanna Oliver and I'm the Director of Global Programmes for the Construction Equipment Association. I'm just going to share my screen now. And yeah, hopefully everybody can see that. So welcome to this next CEA Power Hour. We've got a record turnout today. I think we're about 140 people, which is a real eye-opener for how important this topic is and the law of unintended consequences on how what we thought was going to be a pretty simple free trade agreement is now throwing up lots of anomalies. We've got some great speakers to get through, so I'm quickly going to run through the rules of the CEA House. Webinars held in accordance with our corporate compliance rules. It's going to be recorded and it will be made available to everybody who's registered along with the slides, and also it will be on the CEA website. Please don't forget to stay on mute and turn your video off. It's pretty rancid weather up here. I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, but that usually means that we lose a bit of quality on the bandwidth. And we do our best with technical issues, but if anything does go horribly wrong, we'll try and sort it out. And so please don't complain if you're or we have technical difficulties. So today's topic is beyond Brexit, implications for construction equipment. And it's really following on from the November Power Hour that we had, which featured more on the trade side of Brexit. Today is more on technical and manufacturing side. We have Dale Campsell, who's our senior technical consultant, one of our CEA patrons and a former MEP, Markham Harbour, who will be wrapping up the session and pulling together all the strands. But our first speaker is Kevin Shakespeare, who's Director of Stakeholder Engagement at the Institute of Export and International Trade. And we're really grateful to Kevin, who's jumped in to talk about rules of origin. I was down to do that and quickly realised that it was going to be well beyond my capabilities to have come up to date and understood the entire free trade agreement. So let me stop sharing and Kevin is going to share his screen. Fingers crossed.
So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep, all good.
Great, brilliant. So, okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to present today. I'm just going to go through probably for the next 10 minutes information on rules of origin, which is a key issue and probably one of the biggest issues that we're facing at the Institute at the moment. So just a little bit of information about myself. I'm not really going to say too much about that, but just to add that the Institute was heavily involved in the development of the UK Customs Academy, which now has over 7,000 learners on it, and was the main user of the HMRC grant scheme, and is also delivering the Northern Ireland Customs and Trade Academy as part of the Trader Support Service. So a little bit of information about the Institute. Again, I'm going to predominantly focus in terms of what we provide at the Institute, and certainly it's been an extremely busy year in the last year from Brexit to post-transition. So clearly there's a lot of headlines around the trade deal in terms of 100% tariff liberalisation and no quotas. And the basic principle in theory that no tariffs apply for goods sold to the EU and no tariff apply for goods received from the EU. However, we need to consider this in the context. In order for tariff-free trade to apply, businesses must meet rules of origin requirements. And these rules of origin apply in every trade deal that the UK will enter into. And there's specific requirements and circumstances of each trade deal. And it's not just complying with the rules, meeting the rules, you have to evidence the rules as well. And clearly there's a big part of a trade deal, which is the concept of bilateral cumulation. So which in theory allows EU inputs and processing to be counted as UK input in UK products exported back to the European Union. For example, goods received from Italy, which are then received in Great Britain and then sold back into the European Union, whether that's Southern Ireland or France or Spain or Germany, for example. However, for that bilateral cumulation to apply, there must be sufficient processing. And this is a key area. If there's not sufficient processing, and it's referred to almost as a distribution, a secondary movement, tariffs will apply. And this has been a big issue for GB, Great Britain businesses in the early part of this year, unless you use a customs special procedure. So customs special procedures are already becoming very popular, such as inward processing, customs warehousing, customs freight simplified procedures. In this instance, we're probably talking predominantly around customs warehousing being the solution. Because if there is insufficient processing and it's more just perceived to be a distribution or a secondary movement, tariffs will apply. But by using a customs special procedure, which businesses need to be authorised for by customs, then it's feasible that tariffs will not apply because the goods have not entered free circulation in Great Britain. So proof of origin. So let's look at circumstances where where origin rules are met. So the importer does require to declare hold proof that goods comply with rules of origin. And those rules of origin percentages, sometimes referred to as percentage maximum non-originating value, will vary by product type. So it could be, for example, 45% maximum non-originating, 55%. And that applies different percentage rules by different sectors, but also different products and tariff lines within the sector itself. And it's really up to the importer to declare that they hold proof that the goods comply. So if, for example, the goods suggest that it's 50% non-originating value, non-UK originating, so hence 50% UK origin, then effectively the importer needs to hold proof. So that would be the importer in this instance in the European Union. And it really is up to the importer to decide what proof they hold in that regard. And the same would apply for imports into the UK from the European Union, perhaps more specifically Great Britain in this instance. So the exporter requires to provide a statement of origin. And in some cases, a supplier declaration, which we'll look at. And there is a text or the exporter produces to state the product origin. These are of UK origin. And that would be printed on an invoice or any commercial documentation. So commercial invoice, other documentation such as a packing list and a pro forma invoice. But let's delve into a little bit this point around trade practices underpinned by importers' knowledge. So the importer obviously requires to provide claim preferential duty based on evidence. And that evidence could be from a statement of origin, but what the importer has to consider is that goods have to clear customs based on the origin at the outset of the movement, but also perhaps just as importantly upon audit. So upon customs audit, if it is deemed that the importer had insufficient knowledge and those goods were not of EU origin, or say they were Chinese origin, for example, the importer would be liable to pay tariffs and be subject to penalties as well. And all their transactions would probably need to be investigated as well. So the importer may require more than just a statement of origin. They may require a supplier's declaration. And the challenge we have with supplier's declaration is that some suppliers may not be too comfortable with providing full information on their supply chain. So they may not want to let the importer know that the buyer full details of their supply chain. So there could be reasons of confidentiality why they won't want to do that. So there could be a potential issue on supplier's declaration. If it's intercompany or there's very close relationships between the supplier buyer and the supply chain, that may become less of an issue. Now, in the trade agreement between the UK and the EU, there was a grace period or waiver. If you're claiming preference on the basis of importer's knowledge, you do not need to hold their supplier's declaration at a time of claiming preference until the 31st of December. The challenge there is what we don't want is every business waiting until the 1st of December and then having to frantically gather together all the information. So just because it's a waiver until the 31st December, it's still good practice that businesses should try and gather that information as soon as it's feasibly possible, even if it can't be at the actual time of claiming preference, the time of the goods movement. So that's a very quick overview of the points I wanted to go through there, and probably some of the key points are around the importer's knowledge, the supplier's declaration and the considerations there, and also the concept of bilateral accumulation. At the Institute, we have a big webinar next week on rules of origin, in which we will be introducing more the concept of customs warehousing, possibly returns goods relief, as a solution, potential solution to this issue of secondary movements. And thank you for listening to me. And I don't know if there's any questions or any points anyone would like to ask.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I've got one question. Is your webinar only open to Institute members, or can any of our members?
It's open to absolutely anyone. We had a webinar on the 5th of January where we had over 3,000 delegates. So we're very, very happy for anyone to join that. Okay,
would you be able to send me a link to that? And
yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
It to everybody who's registered here.
Yeah,
that's great. We've probably got a couple of minutes now. If anybody has any questions for Kevin, either put them in the chat box quickly or just shout out. If not, we can take some offline.
Kevin.
Okay, Alexander.
Yeah, hi. We've got a couple of things. We're basically a UK company importing from Italy, but we're a wholly owned subsidiary of that Italian company. Just a couple of things, really. We have had issues with consignments being held up, and you're saying about the warehousing side of stuff. We were shocked to find out that warehousing, certainly at Heathrow, was £16 per kilo per day, and so far £8,500 before they'll release a package that actually costs less than that. So that's one thing, and we're having to work frantically with customs clearinghouses to try and get things cleared, even though we've given origin of production and everything that you've actually just said we are supposed to have. And the other thing is that we're also struggling with movement of goods, where we're trying to actually bring back property that belongs to the company from Southern Ireland at the moment. So there is no monetary transaction. However, we're being told that we need to produce commercial invoices to actually move the goods. Effectively, it's almost like bringing a hire machine back. And I was just wondering what the situation is there, because I've had 5 different answers from 5 different freight forwarders so far. So anything you can shed light on would be very much appreciated right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And first of all, very, very much sympathise with the predicament and issues. A lot of businesses are doing everything correctly, and in some cases the readiness of the whole marketplace to actually be ready for it in terms of the intermediary community is not there. So a couple of things, yeah. Your second question was around where there's no monetary value. Can I ask if I'm very happy to receive an email separately on that. So if you could just email Joanne, and I will then, Joanne will email me and I will respond to you.
Okay,
so that is a key question where there's no monetary value, and we're looking at a couple of possible solutions there, whether that's feasible. On your first one on the warehousing, yeah, absolutely can understand the point there. Probably what the potential solution would be in some cases is for the business to actually take out their own customs approved warehouse. Having said that, there are considerations. It's not as straightforward as saying, right, that we're just going to apply for customs authorised warehouse. So again, there's a couple of things we're looking at. We have taken a very high number of businesses through customs authorisations and procedures. So again, probably it's easy to say that's a solution to have your own warehouse and not use the warehouse of an external party, but I do appreciate it's easier said than done.
Okay, great. Just two quick questions in the chat box. First of all, any implications with regard to rules of origin for Northern Ireland-based manufacturers? And the second one is there a clear definition of sufficient processing? I think I've seen that on the HMRC website, but Kevin?
Yeah, so first of all, in terms of the first one on Northern Ireland, so sorry, and again, I may have misinterpreted the question there. So there's two ways I'll answer that. If you are a business based in Northern Ireland, if you are selling goods to the European Union, it's very much business as usual, as long as those goods, if they move through the GB land bridge, move under transit procedure, or you're moving goods from Northern Ireland to, for example, Rotterdam, or Southern Ireland, it's business as usual. If the issue, however, is you're moving goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, we still have this potential concept of at risk if you're unable to meet the rules of origin on that. So, for example, the origins of goods is from China and New Zealand, for example. And in that case, if you believe the goods are staying in Northern Ireland, you can sign up for the UK Trader Scheme, which is different from a trader support service. The UK Trader Scheme is a government service in which you can effectively self-certify that those goods are not at risk of moving from Northern Ireland. You will be subject to audit and need to have to provide evidence that that is the case. That's a very quick for, and I may not have covered the precise circumstances. Sufficient processing, yes, there are examples, but again, it's a really excellent question in that. So just to be clear, repackaging and relabeling is not sufficient processing. Certainly that's what we're hearing, and that's the case in most trade deals. There has to be some form of processing that takes place. Unlike other trade deals, it may not necessarily mean you need to change the tariff code. Clearly, if you're changing the tariff code from, say, raw materials into finished goods, it's highly likely that you will meet the requirements of sufficient processing. I guess we need to think of the product there. So again, I'm very happy to take questions on if you can give an example of a definition of the actual level of processing, and we can go away and take that away. And it is subject to interpretation as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin, and I'll circulate your email if that's okay after the.
Yeah, that's fine. All I would say when you send emails to me, because I am literally receiving about 600-700 emails a day, I will get back to everyone, and colleagues will get back as well, and we'll certainly do our best to service everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thanks very much, Kevin, on behalf of everybody. I know you've jumped out of a meeting to be with us today, so we'll let you get back into there, but we really appreciate it, and it's certainly a very topical subject and also quite a tricky one. So I'm sure you'll be getting some comments, and we'll publicise your webinar as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to our next speaker now, who's Dale Campsell, the Senior Technical Consultant for the Construction Equipment Association. And Dale's been with us for a while now, and what he doesn't know about technical matters and Brexit effects on our sector isn't worth knowing, hopefully. And if it is, then I'm sure you'll ask him some questions on it. So Dale, do you want to share your screen now?
I certainly will. Let me share my screen. And so you should be seeing now my presentation, and I'll go into full screen mode. So that should now be coming up there.
Yeah,
perfect. Okay, thank you, folks. So, yep, I'm Dale Cancel. I'm the CEA Senior Technical Consultant. So I'm going to give a summary of the changes that we will see in regulations in both predominantly Great Britain and Northern Ireland as a result of the of Brexit. It's only a summary. I can't cover everything, so there are certain aspects that I can't cover today, such as chemical legislation, REACH and F-gas and the like. So I'm only going to cover some aspects, although those are probably those that are of greatest interest to those who are on the call today. So the usual sort of disclaimer at the beginning that the information I'm going to provide has been based on recently available regulations and guidance provided by the UK government and also to the and the fact that everything that we say today does not constitute legal advice. It's only information as best as I'm aware, and it has not been endorsed by the UK government. So just the usual sort of caveats at the beginning. So the FTA compliance implications for goods. We all saw around about Christmas time that an FTA had been agreed, had been signed off. So the important thing to say here is that this has no immediate implications from a technical regulatory perspective. We didn't expect there to be, and there weren't. So from the beginning of this year, the UK versions of EU legislation that we're familiar with came into force. And in any case, the Northern Ireland Protocol would have always come into force on the 1st of January this year, regardless of whether or not the FTA was agreed. The FTA or the TCA, the Trading Cooperation Agreement, as it's known specifically, was applied in the 1st of January, just to say that it is actually provisionally applied at the moment because the European Parliament has yet to. Let me get my pointer up. So the European Parliament has yet to approve it. There wasn't enough time for the European Parliament at the end of last year to ratify it. They intend to do that by the end of January and have until the end of February to ratify it, and then it will be fully applied. We don't expect any surprises in that, but just to let you know that there is the one final stage in the ratification process, just in case you hear something on the news and you get confused as to what's going on. That's that final stage in the ratification. So now I'd like to look at the new borders that are being brought about by the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's important to understand the differences in borders that the Northern Ireland Protocol brings. So firstly, I'm going to look at the situation prior to the 1st of January 2021 and during that time, the whole of the United Kingdom, so England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, were included in both the EU Customs Union and the EU Single Market. So effectively, the border encapsulated all 4 regions of the United Kingdom. Since the 1st of January this year, the EU Single Market border has moved and it now excludes England, Scotland, Wales, but it includes Northern Ireland. From a single market point of view, Great Britain, i.e. England, Scotland and Wales, is no longer in the single market, but Northern Ireland remains in the EU single market from a goods regulatory perspective. And from the 1st of January 2021, from an EU customs point of view, the border looks the same initially, but then goes across the land border in Ireland, therefore meaning that the entire United Kingdom, all 4 regions of the United Kingdom, is now outside of the EU Customs Union. This is not my area of expertise. Obviously, Kevin just spoke on that a moment ago, and we discussed that back in November. This is the area that I'm going to be covering today, the implications since the 1st of January from the single market and placing products on the GB Northern Ireland market since then. So looking firstly at the GB market, what are the implications on CE and UKCA marking? Well, the important thing to say is that the UK government has allowed that CE marked goods can continue to be placed on the GB market through the rest of this year. There are conditions. The conditions are that the CE marking has to be applied on the basis of self-declaration, or where mandatory notified body involvement was required, that notified body was an EU recognised notified body, or where that conformity assessment had previously been performed by a UK notified body, that the certificates and documentation had been transferred over to the EU recognised notified body prior to the end of the transition period on the 31st of December last year. So there is a further 12 months to transition in most cases from a CE marking to UKCA marking. And just to help clarify and flip that around and put it in the other sense, CE marking will not be accepted, caveat, I'll come on to the caveat in a second, during 2021, if either the mandatory third-party assessment, where performed, was carried out by a UK-based notified body, or where that UK notified body paperwork had not been transferred to the EU recognised notified body before the 1st of January 2021. So for most cases, goods that are CE marked can continue to be placed on the GB market through this year, giving members some 12 months to make the transition to UKCA marking. The caveat regards the situation for Northern Ireland manufacturers who are excluded from this requirement, but I will discuss that in more detail in a little while. Just to say that CE marking then becomes invalid on 1st of January 2022. So the previous slide covered 2021. Looking in 2022 now, CE marking pretty much becomes invalid for most, and all products must be UKCA marked from that point forward. However, the government urges that folk don't wait until the last possible moment to make the transfer, and that they make the transfer to UKCA at their first opportunity. Again, CE marking does not become invalid for goods that are manufactured in Northern Ireland. I'll come on to that later. And just a caveat to say that this whole situation of CE marking through 2021 only remains valid provided that EU and UK regulations remain aligned. As far as I'm aware, there would be no significant changes to any EU regulations in the coming months. So I think that is probably an academic point, but it's worth bearing in mind, other than to bring up this same old caveat that regardless of what happens in terms of deviation between EU and UK regulations, Northern Ireland-based businesses are always guaranteed access to the GB market, regardless of any divergence of regulations. But again, I will come on to that in a little while. So there's the mark. This is what the UKCA mark looks like. Now, there is a 12-month period to transition to that mark from the 1st of January this year. However, the government has also allowed a further 12 months after that, i.e. until the 31st of December 2022, in order to take care of marking requirements. So up until the 31st of December 2022, the UKCA mark can either be affixed directly to the product itself, the normal situation, but until this date, the UKCA mark can actually be provided on an accompanying document. Now, those are the exact words that are used, accompanying document, and we have no definition of what specifically is meant by an accompanying document. What has been verbally informed to us is that it is a document which must remain with the product until it reaches the end user. So you can read into that what you will, but there is a further 12 months for manufacturers to make this marking switch in terms of the practicalities. But from the 1st of January 2023, the mark has to be affixed directly on the machine or on the product. The accompanying document is no longer valid. So looking at other aspects and looking at the placing on the market of products, an importer will be required in order to place products that are manufactured outside the UK onto the GB market. That importer will need to be UK based. And I just raise this and really raise awareness specifically about dealers or distributors who might previously have simply been receiving goods from the EU manufacturer and their role was purely that of a dealer. That now has to be looked at because they may actually need to take on the role of importer, which brings with it a whole set of added responsibilities, legal responsibilities. So that is something which needs to be looked at. Similar to the UKCA marking, though, the UK has allowed 24-month period since the 1st of January this year in order for the importer's details to be provided on paperwork rather than on the product itself. Again, it must be on accompanying documentation, and I can't tell you what that means from a specific point of view because that hasn't been defined. But there is 24 months during which the importer's details can be shown on documents. After that, it has to be shown on the product itself. Same situation, similar situation for authorised representatives. If anybody uses authorised representatives, that remains entirely voluntary. It's entirely up to you. If you do wish to use the services of an authorised representative for dealing with the GB market, however, the details of that authorised representative must be shown on the machine marking and the declaration of conformity. And a reminder that UK authorised representative must be based in the UK. It can be based anywhere in the UK, including Northern Ireland, for covering the GB market, but it can't be based in an EU 27 member state, which is where authorised representatives could possibly be at the moment. So I'm now going to move to the Northern Ireland market. So I've already mentioned that Northern Ireland effectively remains within the EU single market. So for the placing of goods on the Northern Ireland market, the legislation that already exists will continue to be applied. So the Machinery Directive, Low Voltage Directive, EMC Directive, Stage 5 regulations, all those sort of legislation that currently exists for the EU will continue to apply in Northern Ireland, and any future changes to those legislations will be applied to Northern Ireland for the placing of products on the Northern Ireland market. So as I mentioned, from the sake of point of view of the Northern Ireland market, please consider it to be within the EU single market. The Northern Ireland Protocol will remain in place for at least 4 years. Part of the withdrawal agreement, the legally binding withdrawal agreement, is that the Northern Ireland Protocol would come into force at the end of the transition period, and it would remain in force for at least 4 years. And it would be periodically reviewed thereafter. It would be reviewed by the devolved Northern Ireland Assembly, the democratically elected Northern Ireland Assembly, and it is up to them to decide, that body to decide whether or not the protocol is working and whether or not they wish to see it changed. But that's maybe a little down the road, because for the next 4 years, that will be the situation. So for conformity assessments, considering the Northern Ireland market, any conformity assessments that were conducted by a notified body in the UK, anywhere in the UK, will be no longer valid in the EU member states, so the 27 EU member states. That's been known for a couple of years, but just to clarify any situation regarding Northern Ireland, those conformity assessments, those UK conformity assessments, will continue to be valid in Northern Ireland from next year. But by the way, I think somebody's not muted. I'm getting the occasional noise coming through the earphone. So appreciate it if folk could mute. That would be great. Thank you. So the conformity assessments will continue to be applicable in Northern Ireland from UK notified bodies. However, those will not be recognised in the EU 27. So where a where a product is approved by a UK-based conformity assessment close to the CE mark, an additional mark showing UKNI will have to be placed on the machine marking to indicate that it was a UK-based notified body that approved the product, and that will mean that the product will not be able to go into the EU market because it is only valid for the UK markets, GB and Northern Ireland. I think this will mostly be a relevant situation, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But it is important to flag that up to those who it will be applicable to. Keeping on with the imports and into the Northern Ireland market. So products that are manufactured in Great Britain and placed on the Northern Ireland market will be considered as imported products, even though Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom. Because it's no longer in the single market, because it's still in the EU single market, it's no longer in the UK market, they will be considered as imported into the EU single market. So a registered importer in the legal sense will have to be established, and the importer's details will have to be marked on the product. And as mentioned previously, the normal rules for identifying the importer's contact details will apply. However, the protocol does allow that importers established anywhere in the EU or Northern Ireland can be considered to be valid for Northern Ireland. So the importer does not have to be based just in Northern Ireland. So an existing EU importer could cover Northern Ireland requirements as well. And similarly, authorised representatives, where they are voluntarily appointed, will have to be established either in the EU or Northern Ireland in order to deal with the Northern Ireland market. Looking the other way, imports into GB from Northern Ireland. Mentioned earlier about the special situation for Northern Ireland businesses and the term unfettered access that you've probably heard many times. So Northern Ireland manufacturers will be guaranteed unfettered access into the GB market as part of the Northern Ireland Protocol. So they can basically continue doing exactly as they are today. And the UK will bound to accept products manufactured in Northern Ireland, manufactured to EU regulations. So Northern Ireland manufacturers can continue to manufacture products according to those EU regulations, like the EU Machinery Directive, EU Stage 5 Directive, and continue to sell those into the UK, even though the UK has switched to UKCA marking, and any products from the EU, from Great Britain or anywhere else in the world will have to comply with UK regulations. Manufacturers based in Northern Ireland can continue to sell products into the GB market that comply with EU regulations. Okay, so there's a real difference there for those manufacturers based in Northern Ireland, that they can continue to sell into GB based on EU requirements. Now, a lot of information I just had to race through there. This chart was developed in order to help clarify the highly complex situation, and it still in itself looks reasonably complex, and I certainly don't have time to go through the detail of it now. But basically what it shows is that wherever the location of the manufacturer is, in order to access these markets, these are the requirements that I just summarized in terms of whether or not an importer is required, where that importer needs to be located, what the regulatory requirement would need to be met, and where any conformity assessments would need to be performed in order to access the market, and what the final machine marking would need to be. Some details there, which you might like to look at a later date, but it summarizes basically everything that I just mentioned. With regards to type approvals now, rather than conformity assessments for machines, so looking specifically at type approvals, for the GB market, firstly, the EU type approvals will continue to be recognised in GB through until the 31st of December 2021, similar to CE marking. EU type approvals will continue to be recognised for products that don't normally require road registration. So this means trailers, engines for non-road mobile machinery, and safety-related components that require type approval. Beyond the 31st of December 2021, we don't know definitively what the situation will be, but we do expect that some form of type approval will be in place from the 1st of January 2022, and the UK government will be developing that regulation during the course of this year. For the Northern Ireland market, from January 2021, and for those products that don't normally require road registration, will either require an EU type approval, i.e. the situation as is now, but UKNI approval will also be acceptable for products that have been approved by UKCA, but approved to EU requirements. Final slide on the current situation, covering market surveillance. For both the GB and the Northern Ireland markets, the same enforcement agencies will continue to act as they do today, but with certain differences, of course. So in Great Britain, HSE will continue to enforce, for example, the UK version of the Machinery Directive, whereas in Northern Ireland, HSE&I will continue to enforce the EU version of the Machinery Directive, and so on for all the other directives. So those enforcement bodies that we've already previously been used to will continue to act, but they might be looking at different regulations to what they were previously. As mentioned about Northern Ireland manufacturers' access to the GB market, there will be a real additive level of complexity for market surveillance officers in Great Britain because of the fact that products manufactured in Northern Ireland to EU requirements will continue for at least the next 4 years to be recognised in GB. So in GB, we're going to have two sets of regulations that are applying. GB regulations for anybody except Northern Ireland manufacturers, and then regulations for Northern Ireland manufacturers. And this will continue to be the case even as and when the EU changes its regulations from as they are today. So we have regulatory divergence. So going to be a bit of a challenging situation ahead. And that's a segue into my final slide, looking further ahead. We already know that the EU is in the process of reviewing and revising some fundamental regulations that we deal with daily. It's also considering new pieces of regulation that could have a significant effect on machinery. And the big question is, how will the UK government respond? Will it simply copy any changes to these regulations or any new regulations, and will they copy them into law that applies for the GB market? Will it ignore them? Will it not change the regulations, and will they stay as they are today? Or will it do something different, either modifying these or doing something completely different? Who knows? I mean, this is only a question that the regulators can answer. It's something we will keep a close eye on. I don't expect anything to change in the near future, but things will change in the near-term future, and it's something we need to be very much aware of. And my role in the CEA is to ensure that members are kept aware of any changes so that they can make any and implement any changes to products in a timely manner. So that is my last slide. I see we have a large number of questions being coming up into the chat box. What I'm perhaps going to suggest is that we move, unless you say differently, Joanna, is that we move over to Malcolm next, Malcolm Harbour, who's going to give us his thoughts, and then I can look at the chat questions, gather my thoughts, and then come back after Malcolm has finished. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. So you can have a flick through there.
Okay.
Can you unshare your screen?
I certainly will. There we go.
And then we'll move over to Malcolm Harbour. Malcolm's been our president for 4 years and had an illustrious career in the European Parliament before that, and actually had a proper career in the real world as an automotive engineer before going into politics. So I don't know whether it's poacher turned gamekeeper or vice versa, but he's going to give us his thoughts on what's been talked about so far and add some views of his own. When that's finished, we will start looking at the questions that are in the chat box. If anybody else has got more questions, please put them in the chat box now. If we run out of time, and we will go over a little bit to try and answer all the questions, but if we do run out of time, we will try and get your questions answered offline. So over to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Joanna. Am I connected? Yeah. I'm not going to speak for very long because I'd like to hear some of the answers to the questions you have from Dale. And also it's been very interesting for me to just update these on matters on which I'm helping the CEA to deal with. I would just say that the list that Dale just showed about the key regulation that originated originally in the European Union were things that I worked on for 15 years in the European Parliament in detail. And indeed, I may have been in contact with some of you about the review of Machinery Directive and particularly the Tractors Directive, where we made some quite significant changes to reflect UK interests. So the first thing to say is that we don't have that facility any longer. But what that does mean is that the engagement of the CEA and your representatives, both with the UK government and also with your European association, which will at least give you a toehold into the decisions that are going to be made. I think that that is something that's absolutely worth bearing in mind. And many of you may already be and continue to be involved in discussions around standards or in European level discussions. And I think that will remain critical, because it seems to me that the whole of the construction equipment area, in which Britain is extremely well established, is not per se an area in which the UK government is necessarily going to look to make significant divergence from the European Union, because it's difficult to see there's going to be significant economic and consumer advantage. And I think that's a general point to make, and for you to make as well. And secondly, I am really disappointed that some of the nuts and bolts of the machinery, like, for example, having mutual recognition of conformity assessment bodies, doesn't seem to be a priority in the first round of negotiations. And I emphasize that as far as I'm concerned, that was the first round to get an agreement across the line. So at least we had an agreement in place. But I think there's going to be a lot more work that needs to be done, and therefore engagement with the Department of Business and in all these representative areas is going to continue to be important. And I think the flow of information between you and the CEA and your European homologues, and also where you're dealing with government, will be extremely important. So that's just a first border point to make. The second point I would make, which is perhaps linked into the way that things are moving forward. Many of you are working on research and development for new products at the moment. The regulatory framework in which you're developing those products, you need that sort of certainty. And so again, that's something I think that you need to make representations to governments about. You know, lead time, development testing, and so on. It seems to me that One of the areas in which you will certainly be looking at is going to be over more digital controls, equipment in the machinery, a much higher content of software in your equipment. We also see the first of the battery electric machinery coming out, which I was very interested to see some of the prototypes the last time we were able to meet together. And just on that specific point about battery-driven machinery, it's worth noting that the car industry sought a specific derogation on the level of on the origin marks of origin marking and the origin definitions to cater for the fact that in electric vehicles, the predominant source of battery supply at the moment has come from outside Europe, and that's a significant value-added component to their equipment. That may be less true in your case, but nevertheless, it's something that's worth keeping an eye on. And also, I'm interested about the whole issue about processing and how you actually account for country of origin of software. And if, for example, you update a machinery in Europe with a significant amount of software, whether that therefore counts as European added value. I suspect these sort of issues are going to be coming up shortly and may make a difference. It would be interesting to get an Institute of Export view about how software and value is going to be treated. So it is uncertain times. At the very least, there is some additional transition time built into that. But I think that it's not too soon to get out of the blocks and be discussing to the government about some sensible changes in order to make your life easier. And particularly, I think the government is very receptive to message about innovations and where you're seeking new markets and where you're looking to take machinery and equipment more environmentally friendly, all the things the government has put on its agenda. And if you can say to them, look, it's not going to make our life easy if we're going to have one set of regulations in the UK and one set in Europe. So we'd like you to be looking at that in order to make us more competitive, and also because we see big advantages for the UK in being able to sell seamlessly into what is going to continue to be a very substantial market. So those are all of those aspects. Now, if it wasn't enough, I just put a first marker on the table, something I think I mentioned the last time that we met together, and it's about the question about movement of personnel and supplying services in European countries. The situation about service providers going established in the UK and supplying services into the European market is still rather unclear at the moment. But there may be a number of cases in which you are involved in doing substantial work in training, installing equipment, showing people how to use the equipment, all these sort of things, where you are effectively supplying services through skilled personnel. Now, in most cases, I think that will work all right. But the fact remains is that because we are no longer under the European rules, which prevent countries from discriminating against your engineers, for example, an engineering as a profession comes under the mutual recognition of qualifications. That you may well just have to make a check on that. And I know that's going to add further unnecessary burden, but it's always worthwhile checking so that you don't run into problems in not being able to satisfy customers with the sort of support that you may need to give them. And particularly customers that are moving machinery and maybe supplying services in other countries. The inspections of those machineries, the safety inspections, if they've been in the UK, you have to make sure they're also valid in other countries. There have been European court cases before the Services Directive came in, where countries tried to prevent machinery from being used because their own safety inspectors hadn't inspected them. Crane hire companies, for example. So just to say, I'm afraid there is that added piece of complication for some of you who may be involved in that. So it's really just a piece of advice to check on that. And I'm sure if you need further advice on that I and others who are familiar with it can help. So I look forward to continuing to work, and I'm honoured to be a patron of the CEA and to provide advice And all I can say is I wish you the best of success in future, but anything we can do to try and overcome some of these problems, we're here to try and deal with those. So in that case, I think I hand back to Joanna, and I think Dale has got a few minutes to get stuck into some of those very interesting questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malcolm, for your insight as always. And I think Dale's going to bring you in on any questions that he thinks that you will have a useful input in as well. So I'll hand back over to Dale. We'll try and get through as many of the questions as we can. I think we can run on for another 10 or 15 minutes. So Dale.
Thanks, Joanna. Okay, yeah, thank you for your questions, folks, and thanks to Alessandro as well, who has been helping out with some of those responses. So the first question: does the TCA address mutual recognition of notified body approvals? No, it was one of the potentials that might have been in there, but it does not. So there is no mutual recognition, and the approvals two separate approvals will have to be performed, I'm afraid. Question.
We might be able to lobby on getting that changed, but I mean that's on the future agenda, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Question then from Paul Dodd, which was: can manufacturers' plates and declarations of conformity contain both CE and UKCA markings? Well, the UK government has indicated yes, it definitely can be both. Applied to both, obviously, provided that you comply with both sets of requirements. The EU has not made any specific rulings or guidance in this matter. However, it is not additional markings are not outlawed, and in fact a lot of manufacturers already dual mark with respect to things like CE and EAC marking for the Eurasian belt. So there is nothing that I am aware of that prevents that, provided that you're compliant with both sets.
No, I think we wrote that into the machinery directive, if I remember.
Yes. Yeah. Good. So from Richard Banks, what defines a company as either an importer or a distributor? Well, an importer has to be registered. An importer is a legally recognized body and would have to have a registration, an EORI number, in order to act as an importer. A distributor remains a distributor if they are receiving the goods internally as a further link in the chain in the supply chain. So if, for example, a manufacturer had 20 distributors in the UK, it would not be incumbent on them to set up each distributor as an importer. They could if they wished. Alternatively, they could set up one importer. That importer is responsible for the whole of the GB market, and the goods then go to the distributor as normal, but the importer through a single importer, if you like. Anything to add on that one, Malcolm?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so from David Wilson, what does the imported thing mean if buying, say, pumps made in Italy but sold through a distributor in Great Britain? Right. So I guess the question is it, rather than if it's, instead of being a total machine, if it's a part of a machine, is that maybe the angle? It will still be the same situation applying, whether it's with regards to importing and the duties on having an importer, whether it's a component, a system, or an entire machine. I think that hopefully answers your question there, David. Please get back to me if it didn't. Question from Michelle Dean. So if a Northern Ireland dealer is buying an asset from the UK, from the GB, I guess, they have to have an EORI number and import process in place. Well, and a an importer has to be in place. It doesn't have to necessarily be the dealer themselves. Another entity can act as the importer, but absolutely products going from GB to Northern Ireland are effectively entering the EU single market, and therefore a EU importer would have to be established.
Mhm.
And will HMRC Nova system still be applicable? That is outside of my knowledge sphere. Malcolm, is there something you might be able to help
and
on?
mine
No.
as well, I'm afraid.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Where's
need our
Kevin?
customs expert on
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think that's Kevin Shakespeare one.
that. Yeah.
Is Kevin still with us, or did he leave?
No, he's gone off.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I mean, it's pertaining to vehicle import, but I had a quick look on the internet, but I couldn't. The HMRC didn't seem to have updated their site beyond the end of December. So.
Okay, sorry, Alexander. I'm afraid no one online who can.
We'll ask
who can
Kevin.
help you. Yeah, we'll ask Kevin and get back to you on that one. So from Derek Colson, from July, EU regulation 2019-1020, this is the market surveillance regulation, requires an EU authorised representative. Will Northern Ireland therefore require an EU authorised representative for GB manufactured goods? Well, to be precise, as I understand that regulation requires a responsible person, which can be an authorised representative, but it can also be other entities as well. So an authorised representative still remains a voluntarily appointment by a manufacturer. So there's no change to there, but from July onwards, 16th of July, I believe, onwards, a responsible person, be that an authorised representative or another entity, according to regulation 2019-1020, would need to be established when transferring goods from GB to Northern Ireland. Hope that answers the question. From Lawrence Bradbury, for products currently self-certified under EU Machinery Directive, what will happen post-December 21? Will this be allowed for GB manufacturers? Yes, absolutely. So for so I'm assuming you're, well, whether it's for the EU market or for the GB market, if it's purely self-assessment, then self-assessment remains valid in both markets. For certain requirements, that might require you to use certain harmonised standards for things that are, for example, in Annex 4 of the Machinery Directive and the like. But provided you apply harmonised standards, then self-declaration in those cases is absolutely valid. So self-declaration remains as equally valid in the future as it was in the past for both markets. That will not be ruled out.
But I think on the conformity assessment of that, I mean, if that was picked up, then presumably there would be a change after the transition. So that if that happened in the EU, that's when your responsible individual or authorised representatives they would have to deal with any issues that came up if something was picked up in a conformity assessment. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. You mean in once the product is in service? Yes.
Once the product is in service, I mean, if it's self-certified, you can put it on the market.
That's correct.
But
yes.
It's responsibility for dealing with any issues that might arise under a conformity assessment.
Absolutely, Malcolm. That's correct. Yes, yes. Once the product is placed on the market, then that is where the role of the importer or the authorised representative would pick up if there was a challenge or a query from a market surveillance authority.
And that's where the new requirements, tougher requirements and conformity assessment under 2019-1020 will then come into play.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, for sure. Another question from David Wilson. Does buying components manufactured in EU or rest of world, which are imported into UK and subsequently into Northern Ireland, need a Northern Ireland importer? Well, this now comes down to the matter that was discussed by Kevin earlier, and depending on what you do with the components, if you're putting those components into another product and substantially changing that product in terms of performing sufficient manufacturing change, then the rules of origin matter come to bear. So I think the answer to that, David, is it depends what you're doing. If you're not substantially changing them, they come into they pass customs, so they're effectively in free circulation in GB. If they then go into Northern Ireland, then an importer would be required. They'd be considered as being imported. From Kevin Essler, are parts for use with machines subject to tariffs if they are imported separately from the machines, supplied from EU, but originating elsewhere? Machines subject to tariffs. Okay, so for the like spare parts and the like, is that, I guess that's what the question is referring to. Malcolm, is this?
Well, I mean, I think again, these are part of the complex areas. So I would just remark about this whole issue about spare parts, which does seem to me to be quite complex. So that if you have an EU manufactured spare part component which has quite a high level of external content, so say you have a pump which has equipment that's come from out parts from China or other countries, then presumably there are going to be issues about tariffs applied. That doesn't meet the local content requirement. On the other hand, if you then put it into a machine for final installation, or if you're buying it for a new machine, then essentially that may not matter, because in the overall local content of the machine will be fine. So, I mean, this is an added complexity, I think, where you would need to take some specialist advice on that. And I don't think there are special provisions for spare parts as opposed to fully equipped machinery.
No, not as far as I'm aware.
And of course, that may make an impact on how you decide to manage your parts distribution anyway. Which comes back to the issues that Kevin was talking about in terms of what I always think of as bonded warehouses, but what he calls special arrangements or special customs regulations, I think he called them.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Malcolm. We then have a comment rather than a question from Riccardo Viaggi, and Riccardo is the Secretary General to the Cross-European Association for Construction Equipment, CEA, and Riccardo writes a comment on what Malcolm has mentioned about the continued contact and collaboration with the EU side of things. I am happy to confirm that CEA in Brussels look forward to keeping in close contact with CEA and its members that are already involved in our groups. Avoiding or limiting regulatory divergence is key to both sides. Thanks for this interesting session. And thanks for the comment, Riccardo. Yep, and just to reinforce that, CEA membership of CEA is not contingent upon the UK being a member of the EU. The CEA will continue to play a full and active role in CEA. As you can see, the door is wide open there from Riccardo for CEA's continued involvement. Reassuring to hear, Riccardo, and hopefully members will be reassured to know that UK manufacturers will still have an equally a loud voice in amongst the European regulators as they do today. From Paul Dodd, Joanna, just shut me up if we have to wrap up, but I will continue until I'm advised.
Let's do this one and the next one, then I think we probably should take anything else offline.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so from Paul Dodd, does a GB manufacturer of type approved vehicles need to appoint an importer as well as an authorised representative? If so, does an importer need to be appointed in each EU 27 state? So my understanding on this one is that an authorised representative is always voluntary. And this relates back really to the question earlier with the incoming market surveillance regulation 2019-1020. Certainly certainly a responsible person will need to be appointed, and that can be one of four entities, of which one is the authorised representative. So a responsible person will definitely be needed to cover the EU market. However, only one will be needed. You will not need a responsible person for each EU 27 state. One will cover all 27. You won't need 27 separate ones.
Exactly. The single market remains intact.
Some degree of continuity. Thank you, Malcolm. And final question then from today, from Richard Banks. Has BSI released yet the list of harmonised standards list like EU regs? Okay, so I'm going to answer that question in two parts. Actually, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to go off at a tangent, similar to the CC aspect I mentioned a little earlier. Just want to reinforce the fact that BSI will retain full and active membership of CEN and CENELEC, the European standardisation bodies, through the rest of this year at least. That is guaranteed until the 31st of December 2021. BSI during that time will continue to actively seek fuller and even permanent membership of CEN and CENELEC. So in the short term, BSI will continue to play an active role, and through companies' representatives in BSI, they will continue to be able to influence CEN and CENELEC standards. However, specifically about your question, okay, it's actually the UK government who decides which is the which harmonised standards are appropriate for UK regulations, just as it is the EU who decides which CEN and CENELEC standards are provide a presumption of conformity against EU regulations. The UK government has released a set or a listing of what it calls designated standards. So they've changed the terminology in order to differentiate. The terminology is now designated standards, and a full listing of designated standards against each relevant piece of UK legislation is available, has been published. That has been shared with the General Technical Committee members. So Richard, I don't know if you have any representation on the General Technical Committee, but that can be made. I can help you by giving some links to those lists when the information following this meeting goes out. So those lists are available and quite detailed. So Joanna, I think that completes the question and answer session from my point of view.
Yes, it does. And thank you very much, Dale and Malcolm, for really answering quite a lot of questions in a short space of time. If anybody has got any more questions, please email us. You can email me, joanna.oliver@thecea.org.uk, usual number. Usual email, and I'll pass those on to Dale. Just very quickly, if anybody's still hanging on, I'm just going to share my screen again, and the next Power Hour will be on the 24th of February, and we've got Sam Mottram, who is the Global Commercial Manager for Caterpillar for mini excavators, utility vehicles and small type tractors. And Sam's going to be looking at both North and South American markets for our sector. And I'm going to try and talk on what's left of the international exhibitions programme, if anything. They will keep getting moved forward this year, hopefully with the vaccination coming in. We'll have some better news by next month. But also some of the initiatives that the CEA is doing when we can't travel. And I'm going to be sending out details of a virtual trade mission that we're doing in partnership with the British Embassy in Helsinki to put UK construction equipment manufacturers in touch with end users in Finland. That will be going out in the next day or so. So thank you very much to our speakers again, and for all of you who registered, and to most of you who made it through to the end. And have a good day. Hopefully you don't get flooded. I'm going off to build an ark. Bye.
Bye.